offer a trigger warning for the content that I'm about to share with you. While I plan to be discreet and as gentle in my approach to this subject as I know how to be, I realize that it's going to be difficult. I realize that this may cause unwanted feelings, emotions, and responses from anyone who has ever been hurt by or personally affected by sexual abuse. I feel you, I stand with you, I am you, which is why I have to share. Silence does nothing except cause more pain. And I believe that part of my purpose in life is to be somewhat of a spiritual surgeon. That means that sometimes taking out the knife and cutting away at certain places can be very painful, but it's also necessary. While temporary pain may ensue and often feels never ending, the goal is to reconstruct the image with so much care and tenderness to the point that you can't even see the scars. So this is far from the easiest thing that I've ever had to do. So if I sound weird or awkward or like some random infomercial, I apologize. I'm simply trying to maintain my emotions and get the message out without adding too much to it. You may or may not be aware of some of the most recent public sex scandals that have come out across Christian churches recently, including some of the biggest names ever. Now, I want to be clear, my goal here is not to gossip or to talk about people and just name drop for the sake of shaming anyone or making anyone feel embarrassed. But the names that I do mention, which are also in the title of this video, are those scenarios where so many people are already aware of what's going on because they've been made very public. Now, I have seen a lot of people talking about this, but I want to come from slightly a different angle today. And that is that most people have been talking about the fact that when these scenarios come up, that they're done by these big time preachers, pastors, or leaders in these mega churches. And what I want to talk to you today is about the fact that this happens all across the board. Big churches, small churches, you name it, it's happening. While I know that that may not be a surprise to some of you, I just feel like big churches have this stigma or this reputation attached to them that these sorts of things take place in large churches. Well, I have a story to share with you today, and it's my own experience, and it comes from a very small local church. And so I want to be clear that the things we see happening can happen to anyone. Any leader can fall, big or small. It's all about the system of accountability that you have set up for you and your personal issues that you choose to deal with or to try to bury. So Ravi Zacharias, if you aren't familiar with him, super influential international minister who's been around for decades. He recently passed less than a year ago. And it came out after his death that he had been accused, and it's been confirmed, that he was sexually abusing several women. And I won't go into the details of that. You can look up the story on your own. But I want to share that just to say this is someone that people had a lot of respect for. He had built a reputation that no one really saw this coming. And so the ministry is now having to pick up the pieces, trying to figure out what to do, all because of one man's inability to control his desires. The other person that I'm going to mention here by name is Lentz. And I'll tell you, one of the differences that I see when people talk about Ravi Zacharias and Lentz is, oh, well, I knew Carl wasn't any good. And a lot of people say that just because he's a city pastor. He pastored a huge church in New York City and was very well known. He was what you would call a celebrity pastor. He was even Justin Bieber's pastor. And so when people look at him, he's got tattoos, he's, somewhat attractive, I guess people would say. It's easy to look at someone like that and automatically have all of these opinions about who they are. But I tell you one thing that's interesting to me, Carl is still alive. He still has a family and young children who are having to go through this situation with him. And one thing that I do at least see, and I am not defending the guy, is that he is taking responsibility for what he did. Now, the reason I mention that is because what I have to share with you is going to show the polar opposite of that. And I just want you to see that there's a difference in those who are willing to speak up when they've done wrong and admit to their faults, and those who choose not to ever own up to it. I am not here to criticize anyone. I'm here to criticize an issue that I see. Time's up. That's been a slogan that the world has attached to sexual misconduct for a couple of years now, but I'm telling you, it's affecting the church just as much as it is in culture. My goal is to provoke change, or at least be a part of the conversation where people are trying to hold those accountable who say that they walk in a particular lifestyle, but their actions prove otherwise. I'm nobody. I mean, we're all somebody, but my point is, I don't have this large platform. I'm not someone who has this huge voice that they can use, but I'm gonna tell you this. I'm gonna use what I have, because there's so much going on that's not being talked about, and it grieves me to see it. And this was the last straw. I'm here to speak my truth today, because people need to understand this doesn't just happen to someone who just, you know, flirted with the pastor or tried this or was alone in a situation they shouldn't have been in. This can happen to someone like myself, who is simply out here trying to live a moral life, do the right thing, and place herself around those that she feels are trying to do the same thing. I don't expect perfection. I'm far from perfect, but that does not mean that I have to silence myself in this situation that is so hard to deal with because there's no real support. So let's talk about it. It's been more than a month now at the time of this recording since I myself went through a situation that I really could have never seen coming. And it's almost weird to talk about because I know there's gonna be backlash. I know that some people are not going to like that I'm making this video, but I have to share my story. I have to speak my truth. I'm going to speak the truth, because every time I do that, I find more freedom from this situation and other abusive scenarios that I've witnessed other people go through and have been through myself. So as I just mentioned, it's been over a month now since I went through a situation with my own pastor, a local pastor, local church in the community that I've grown up in. I've been a part of this ministry for over 8 years now, and I'm telling you, I never saw this day coming. Many people don't know at all, but I am currently in grad school getting my master's in Christian leadership. That's a whole other story. In this particular program, I am required to have a ministry supervisor, which means that I have to have a pastor or a minister who has been doing this for a long time, who can kind of be a support to me throughout this and just walk me through certain things, be a mentor, right? Again, more details can come on that later. My goal is not to be a preacher, pastor, none of that. I simply have an issue with the fact that we don't have a lot of leaders standing up, and I would complain about that. And God said, okay, why not you? So here we are. So of course, since I've been a part of that ministry for over 8 years, who better to ask than my own pastor to be my ministry supervisor? We would try to meet periodically, so like maybe every couple of weeks, to get together so that we could share with one another. He could share things with me as far as ministry is concerned, and I could glean from him and just learn different things. Well, it was a very big shock to my system when he made sexual advances toward me. You heard that right. My pastor of over 8 years made sexual advances towards me. And I will not get into the details of it because honestly, that would just be a battle I'm not willing to fight. I'm not going back and forth with anyone about what's true, what's not true. I know what's true. I've shared with people who needed to know the specifics of this encounter. And I'm not going to, again, release any information on who the individual is or what was said and done right now. But I can tell you, without a doubt, that it was inappropriate behavior. Not only is he more than double my age, not that that matters, but I'm just making it clear that this was so wrong on so many levels. This is someone I trusted. This is a man that I've talked to about the fact that I was sexually abused as a child. This man baptized my children, for lack of a better word, more of a dedication, but baptized my children when they were born. He has counseled my marriage. He has been a part of a lot of significant moments in my adult life. And so I never thought that this would happen. This was not the kind of person that I thought he was. That is why I'm sharing, because this situation that I just went through has caused me to elevate my level of compassion, which I already thought I had compassion for people who go through this. This is not the first time a man has gotten inappropriate with me. And that's what made this so difficult, because he also knew of my past. He knew all of this and ultimately tried to use that to manipulate me into a situation where he could take advantage of me. The furthest I'll go in explaining in detail what happened without going into detail is that he basically said, in other words, that he wanted a physical relationship with me. And I'm phrasing it nicely, but that's where I'll leave it. I'm not sure what's worse, the fact that that happened or the fact that the church has been silent on it for the most part. I still have so many questions. I still have so many concerns, but I'm telling you, the more that I share, the better I feel. And ultimately, as much as it sucks that this whole thing happened, I'm glad that the truth of who this person was exposed so that I could walk away from it and no longer feel tied to something that's manipulative in nature. I hate that I have to be the one to speak up. And I'll tell you, the only thing that really pushed me here was when I started to dig in further to this issue, I found out that I wasn't the only one. I was able to at least find out that this behavior from this pastor spans back for at least a decade. I'm the first person to speak up. I don't say that to get some kind of brownie points or kudos. I say it because it's sad. It's sad that many other women have gone through this and they haven't had a place to go. Because you know what? I didn't have a place to go in that church. Now, I want to be clear that God always provides you what you need when you need it. And so I first confided in one couple that I felt led to go to. But if we're talking specifically about the leadership, the pastors in that church, there was not a person I could go to. And do you think any of them have reached out to me? At this point, they all know something happened, even if they don't have all of the details. And as far as they're concerned, well, she's not here now. That's water under the bridge. Let's just keep it moving. As a whole, with the exception of some people in that church, as a whole, they are actively trying to cover up what took place and protect the pastor. Now, I know some people who might watch this and still attend that church might say, well, Crystolyn, that's not what's happening. You know, we're not trying to cover for him. There is scripture. You could go to Matthew chapter 18, 1 Timothy chapter 5. I won't go into the details of that right this moment, but it talks about how we address these things, and silence isn't the answer. I do appreciate and I'm grateful for the few of you who learned about what happened and reached out to me. I can't express my gratitude enough. But this whole thing is so sad because it shows that there's such a lack of accountability in the church, which takes me back to those big churches we were talking about in the beginning. So many people think that these things only happen in big churches with celebrity pastors where they don't have accountability because they've just gotten so high and mighty. No, this is also happening in a congregation with 30 people, 50 people, 100 people, 200 people. It's happening all across the board because as a whole, the church is lacking accountability, and it's time for that to be done. It's time for that to be over. There needs to be accountability. I cannot even believe that the fact that there was no one for me to go to in leadership led me here to sharing it like this so that other people can be aware of what's going on, because not enough people wanted to hear the story. Not enough people wanted to address it. There are some people in the ministry who have learned about what's going on and still choose to stay at the ministry, which is their business. I'm not judging that. I'm judging the reason though, I'll be honest, because the pastor needs them. That same person, they don't think to reach out. And trust me, I'm fine. My point is, can you imagine if I wasn't as strong in my relationship with the Lord? If I didn't have my own personal relationship, this is something that could have damaged me as an individual. Oh, it hurt. I don't trust people easily. I don't open up to people a whole lot. And so for me to have opened up with this person over a period of nearly a decade, it's ridiculous that it led to this. Knowing that I didn't have anyone in my church to go to, I reached out to other people that I knew in ministry, other churches, and I'm so grateful for the 3 couples outside of this church who did speak to me and have helped me along over these past few weeks in one way or another. But for the churches and ministers that I did reach out to who told me that they don't counsel people who are not members of their own church, shame on you. Where does that leave people like me? Where does that leave a victim in a situation like this who's dealt with something so disgusting and they don't have a place to go, and you are so bent on only doing things your way that you forget to do it Jesus's way? If you can turn away someone who's hurt and you call yourself a Christian, you need to reevaluate your belief system. As someone who's a glutton for punishment, Lord help me, it really does sicken me to feel like there are people who are way older than me, who've been in ministry for decades or longer than I've been alive, who still refuse to own up to their misbehaviors, people who refuse to accept and admit when they've done something wrong, and for people who look for excuses to the things that they do. One of the biggest things from this situation that hurt me was the fact that my pastor, former pastor, was willing to call me a liar and say that I was working with the devil, basically saying that I was being used by the devil to bring the ministry down, as opposed to owning up to what he did. It was so unnecessary when he said that, because I hadn't gone public with anything. I had still only talked to 3 people total, had not even spoken to any of the leaders in the church, and he decided to still call me a liar, basically. I'm so tired of people not being held accountable for their actions, for what they're doing, and for hurting people the way that they are. Ministry is supposed to be a place where you teach people how to truly love, and you do that through your actions. You do that through your walk. The church is full of hypocrites who refuse to actually walk out what they're teaching, and I'm telling you, time's up. So yes, I'm going to share what happened with me, because I'm not going to be quiet while you sit there and continue to do the same thing to someone else. I'm at least going to share this to try to prevent the next person from having to go through it. And people can try to sit on their hands all day long and not address this. When I speak on this, I get freer every single time I share. And so I will keep speaking. I will keep sharing. One thing that I want all of us to recognize, realize, and walk away with today is the fact that our trust should not be in one person. We also shouldn't idolize someone so much that we can't even believe it, to the point of shaming the victim when we hear what someone else has done. What I'm trying to say is, and what I'm having a hard time articulating because I'm so frustrated by this, it's just that we would rather demonize the person who has the courage to speak up about their situation than hold accountable the abuser, the person who probably continues to do the behavior because no one checks them on it. So our goal shouldn't be to be like a Ravi Zacharias, a Lentz, you name whoever it is that you might admire, right? Our goal shouldn't be to be like them. You know whose goals? Jesus. He's goals. He's the one that we should be trying to be like, because he's the only one that did it right every time. It does not mean that he never displayed negative emotions, that he never got upset when there was injustice, or that he didn't speak out when there was wrong. And that's where the church gets confused. They would rather be upset with someone like me who's speaking out against those things that are dead wrong than to actually address the issue. But I'm not gonna be quiet. I'm not gonna stop. Because guess what? My goal is to not live in pieces, but to live in peace, sis. Okay? That is what I want for you. Stop letting people hold you down with their belief systems, with their way of doing things, with their manipulation, with their religious manipulation. Get you a personal relationship so that when something negative does take place, because that's what happens in our human experience, but when those things happen, it shouldn't push us so far away from God that we totally reject him based on people and church. That's why I keep on saying the church has it all wrong right now, guys. And it's up to us to walk it out the right way so that we can be an example of what God's love really is. This was weird. I didn't know how to talk about it. I didn't know what to say. I can't even quite get my thoughts together. Not gonna lie, I don't really know if I like the way that I delivered this message or what, but I know it had to happen because every time I share, I find myself feeling more and more free. And that's what this journey is all about, to freedom, not bondage, not being held down by rules, regulations, certain belief systems. I'm telling you, this whole thing just frustrates me so much. I often joke that God is looking down on us like, what are y'all doing? I just think we have it all backwards. Maybe not everything, but a lot. And until we start walking in truth, it's not gonna get better. So yeah, I'm gonna keep talking.